And so at this point, I'll just go back to Jen again on Long Island, and I'm going to put the picture of her unit back up because we didn't have much time to talk about that. And so, Jen, I have one question for you. In looking at this zone building unit, does this unit actually do any deep tillage?
It has a shank on it. It's not deep by any means. I would say, you think 8 inches? About 6 inches that goes down.
Small.
It's a very small shank.
Can you tell us what is the make of this?
That's a yetter.
The whole business is a yetter.
Yes.
And do you know anyone else who's using this? Or does anyone here, do we know of any other growers that are using a yetter? If you were going to try, Jen, you've only do one row at a time. But is there anything that you would like to change about this unit to improve it for your situation?
I think one of my biggest questions is how much residue is too much or too little? We have quite a bit because we always think the more the better, but I'm wanting to hear from other growers what they have experienced as whether we really need all that residue. And then I think that zone builder would work. It's worked very well for us the way we've had it set up, but with less residue it would work even better.
And again, your goal is having a lot of residue because you have pumpkins there.
Yeah, it keeps the pumpkins clean, and from what we feel, it's supposed to help with the weed control, but we're having issues with weed control. So then you go on to putting on strategy and sandia, but then you have to get it incorporated into the soil, and with more residue, you need more rain to get it down into the soil if it does make it into the soil.
So I know, George, that you do pumpkins with a lot of rye residue, and does yours look like hers in the spring?
She wants to know if your fields look like hers does with that much
no,
residue.
No, I don't have that much residue. That looks like a little bit more than I'd like to have. I had 1 year like that, the year I told you I had to roll it, and the problem was that it held the moisture so bad that it was just awfully, awfully wet underneath that big mat of residue, way more than I wanted, and the soil was a lot colder there, and I had a slug problem. So I don't have only about half that much residue. When I spray the rye and let it fall down when it's about 24, 30 inches high, and I don't let it get as heavy as that is. For that reason, because it holds too much moisture.
Do you have
I don't know,
trouble
my experience. Whoops. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you have trouble with weed control with the less residue? How is the weed management with that?
I have had no really good luck. I talked to Robin Belinder some years ago, and she's got me doing the strategy sandia, and when I plant, and then I go in 30 days later with the other. I put a half rate of sandia on and go in 30 days later with the other half and select to get the grass if there is any. And for the last few years, I've had very, very excellent weed control with about half as much residue as in that picture there.
If the goal is to build up organic matter from a larger amount of organic mass, when do you stop worrying about it? It seems to me that most of this conversation this morning has been towards less residue rather than more. But if the goal is to build up the organic matter from a health standpoint, how do we address that?
Cover crops.
Yep, and less tillage.
You want less tillage, and the idea of the less residue is to make your planter work better, but you want to cut the tillage out, which is what burns up the residue in the first, or the organic matter in the first place, and then make it up with cover crops. Go in after, as soon as you get a crop off the field, go in and plant some kind of a cover crop right behind it, and build your organic matter with your cover crops.
But the building organic matter really centers around very, very few tillage trips. I'm a firm believer that one ripping or stripping pass and one planting pass is all the tillage that we should be talking about in most cases. And once our soil recovers and gets to be structurally better, then we can get by with a, quote, no-till with some zone-till coulters on the planter, so you can, in fact, have a one-pass planting system. But you can't get by with one-pass planting until you get your soil softened up and the structure better and the organic matter brought up a little bit. It takes a tremendous amount of organic matter to raise the organic matter in the soil test, as found in the field. The tillage just burns that up like a brush pile on fire.
We've done some studies where we looked that we're applying lots of organic matter onto the field over time, and the amount that is needed to actually move the organic matter test, is tremendous. But what we do observe is after a couple of years, even with just using a rye cover, that we detect differences in aggregate stability in the soil very quickly. So you can be affecting soil health and soil quality when you're incorporating all of these practices together, despite not seeing that organic matter number change. And the part of that to remember is that these different types of cover crops and the types of organic matter, carbon that you're adding to the soil, they're broken down at different rates by soil organisms to create that aggregate stability and to actually help improve the tilth of the soil. But those benefits are accruing prior to actually seeing big changes in the numbers, because we have different fractions, different size of particles, and different ways in which organisms attack this organic matter. So I think that just as Jim and George have been saying, it's the combination of activities that we have between adding organic matter, reviewing our tillage, looking at the rotation and the combinations of crops and the way that we're doing all of our management across a whole rotation are all important factors in affecting how that organic matter is going to change.
So your machine, if you had standing rye at a lower density, could you run it, and you killed it with Roundup, could you run it through your machine?
Probably.
If it worked for that, I think it would work for anything. I still am questioning if that mass that we have there is gone in a one-year rotation, is that not benefiting the land? And as far as tillage goes, that strip and then the planter through it is all the tillage that ground will see this year, in 1 year. And there's been no moldboard plow, no disking for 6 years. It's all been vertical tillage. And it's seen an increase in the organic rate. Small, but albeit an increase. But if that material is disappearing, is that good or not?
Well, it's definitely being incorporated and broken down in the soil, so I don't see that it could be bad. It's definitely working to build your soil quality.
Then why shouldn't we make the machinery work for that, to that goal?
And are you saying that you don't believe that it's working that way right now? Because I'm looking at this picture and it looks like it's doing a nice job.
No, I think it is doing a nice job, and
Yeah.
we're looking to add even more.
Oh, okay.
Just point in passing here, observation, I guess. If you, the picture of the Ellis Chalmers deep tiller of the Cornell unit that Anu's got, I put that together and I ended up with the 3 coulters way out front. And a number of times that thing has been used, and we've had a better mini mound being built that's chopped up finer. So we got the 3 coulters way out front, doing a good job. Then we got the deep till shank. Then we got the row cleaner, a row cleaner, and then the closing coulters and rolling baskets. And I wonder if that thing would work better down there to make a nice brown, even textured band for the planter to work into, or transplanter, whichever we're using.
Somebody come.
Did I say nothing?
See what you did now?
No, I was trying to bring it up.
Oh, you're trying to bring it up. Now you
I
can
was
show
trying
my
to bring it
mistakes.
up.
You'll notice, folks, that there's 3 coulters way out front on that thing, and that's just kind of the way the iron let me put some of that stuff together. So there's 3 coulters out front kind of preparing a band for the deep tiller, and then with the closing coulters and rolling basket. And we've had pretty good luck in some ugly situations with that working. And I wonder if in the rye, in Jen's case, we need 3 coulters out front? I don't know. As opposed to the row cleaners trying to get it cleared out way out front. Because we do have a tremendous mat of stuff there.
I think that this is one of those situations where subtle changes in the setup of the unit can have a big impact on the quality of the zone. That's what we've observed.
Right.
Changing the angles of the closing coulters, all of the, just in playing with it in a situation, to be able to have the time to do that's been really critical, especially in startup. So in thinking about getting into doing this, I think it's particularly important to start slow and to encourage, if you're interested in sort of doing a demonstration, to consider having a unit that you can actually try on different fields and then manipulate and change some of the way that this unit is set up so you can learn how it is performing in your system. So, because in each particular scenario, it might be slightly different.
Anu, while you're on that, I'd like to add a comment about a comment that was made earlier about when you should plant after zone tilling. And I think George at the time said that you should let it settle for a while after you zone till. And that's not the experience the growers in New England are having. Most of them are zone tilling and planting the same day or the very next day. Tom Scott's sitting next to me. He's hooked up his planter to his zone tiller, so he's doing both in one pass. We haven't had any problems with stands. It doesn't seem to need to settle. I know if you take a penetrometer and feel down through that slot, it feels like about 10 inches down that there's a void about 4 inches. We were concerned about that at first, but we haven't seen any problems with seed settling or the soil settling and causing problems with the stand. So for anybody that wants to try it that way, and it could be the difference between New York soils and New England soils. Most of the vegetable growers in New England are on sandy loam soils. And we're just not having a problem.
Jude, I comment on that. I agree with you to an extent. I was talking about heavier soil and my clay soil. I have done zone tilling in the clay soil and gone back 3-4 weeks later, and I can still poke the penetrometer right down the slot that never hasn't sealed up if I do it in the spring. On my sandy soil, which I have blow sand in one field that I have sweet corn in, I don't zone till anymore. I just leave it alone, just plant right in it. I mean, I don't use the zone builder. But in the loamy soil or the lighter soils, I agree with you that you don't have to wait very long. But the bulk of my soils are heavier, and particularly the heavy clay. And like I said, I can go back there a month later and it's still got an open slot down under there if I'm not careful. So that's kind of what I meant.
Great. All right, folks, we're kind of at the end of the time that we had for this video conference. I really hope that
It's time to eat.
if you could you guys mute out there in Western New York? I can hear all your giggles.
I said it's time to eat.
It's time to eat. Anyways, I want to thank you all for joining us. And again, remember that have lunch, but take this opportunity to visit with folks that are in your site to talk some more about doing zone tillage. And if you're in New York, again, we have some funding to help underwrite the sort of setting up of demonstrations. We're happy to do that, happy to work with you to coordinate that. And again, if you have Phytophthora on your farm, we are looking for other collaborators, and we will be at your farm if you are collaborating, doing numerous tests on behalf of the project, but hopefully things that you can use to learn from as well.